So I agreed to do some work with my friend on his cellular company. And in fact, as I was driving to the first meeting, I had to stop at the bank first. And pulling in front of me into the bank parking lot was a landscaper's pickup. And as they parked next to where I parked, the pickup unloaded, and who came out of that pickup was a wonderful work crew of young Mexican men. And they went into the bank. I got in line behind them. They all had their checks. They were all cashing their checks. I remembered when that occurred, a point in time soon after I graduated from college, where I worked as the foreman for a commercial nursery west of Chicago. 7 or 8 huge greenhouses, 60 acres or so of bushes and shrubs that we were growing and trees, and we would bring those into our retail customers in the city. And one of my jobs was to head into the city at 6:30 in the morning and pick up a truckload filled with young, these were really sort of boys. These were more like teenage Mexican boys who would then come out to the nursery and be part of my work crew. And I remembered when I was working with these boys at the nursery how very impressed I was with what they had done. How I was just blown away, quite frankly, by their courage that they exhibited to leave their villages, come to a foreign land where in those days there was a good bit of antagonism towards them, to improve their family's condition, to earn money to send back home. I just thought how very courageous this was. As I was watching these Mexican men in the summer of 2001 and remembering these young boys, I immediately understood, I had this creative insight about what we should do to create a powerful story for this prepaid cellular company. Rather than putting together a prepaid package for people for whom prepaid is always going to be the second choice, instead, why don't we develop a prepaid cellular package for folks who really need prepaid, and Mexican immigrants, and excuse me, it's probably illegal Mexican immigrants, but Mexican immigrants don't have the credit rating available to them that will allow them to get conventional cellular. They can only get prepaid cellular. So by the time I arrived at the offices of Equitel, what I had concluded was that I was really very comfortable with embracing this creative insight that I had, that what the story that we needed for this prepaid cellular company was a story about how we were going to develop a cellular company specifically for the Mexican immigrant community. I shared that proposition with the guys who were around the table. I told them about how I had arrived at this thought. They'd had an alternative. They had thought about, well, gee, what if prepaid would work really well for the college community? One of the things that their technology platform was allowing them to do would be to create discrete subcategories of customers within their larger customer base. So their idea was that maybe college students would find it to be interesting to have a product that would appear to be a cellular company specifically for their school. There would be the University of Michigan Cellular Company. There would be the North Carolina State Cellular Company. And the additional reason they thought that the college community might be the right community was that there is a sense, of course, that so many of these students don't pay their own cellular bill, but that cellular bill is being paid for by their parents, and that the parents might appreciate a prepaid cellular package developed specifically for college students. I not only was excited about my idea, I must confess I thought their idea had a serious flaw, and I shared that flaw with them, which is that those college students would be in that group of folks who would see prepaid as the second best choice, not as the best choice. As they're developing their independence, as they're appreciating their independence, as they're moving towards more and more independence, prepaid would perhaps make them feel like they're still on something like a leash, that their parents still have them on something like a leash. And so I suggested that the college community wasn't right, but that what would be right would be developing a product for folks who really needed this version of the product. That was a large market. We found out later that it was a very large market. We found out later, we found some market research there in the year 2001 that predicted that by now, the Hispanic market in the United States would be as large as the entire Canadian economy, and that 65% of that Hispanic market was a Mexican immigrant community market. And so clearly the market was large enough. Clearly the market was large enough. As I was discussing this idea with my friend and his senior executives at Equitel, I was discovering that I was saying Mexican, let's develop a cellular company for Mexicans, they were saying back to me, Hispanic, let's develop a cellular company for the Hispanic community. I was saying Mexican, they were saying Hispanic, and after that happened 2 or 3 times, I thought about that, and I suggested to them that what we wanted with this company was deep, deep passion on behalf of our audience. If you need a powerful story that's going to convince investors that this is exactly the right direction to go, we want every edge that we can possibly create for ourselves. And that I suggested to them that, for instance, if a young Mexican fella learned that Brazil and pick another Hispanic country, if Brazil and Guatemala were playing in soccer, I might be interested in watching that game on television if I find that it's convenient for me to do so. On the other hand, if that same fellow were to discover that Mexico was playing anybody in soccer, boy, he would reorganize his life to be in front of the television to watch that match, and that was the sort of passion, that was the sort of loyalty, that was the sort of prejudice in our favor that we wanted to plug into. And so what we finally concluded, sitting around that table that day, was that in fact this creative insight that I had was one that we were going to invest ourselves in, and that we were going to be the first company to create a cellular service package. It later became in fact a company specifically for the Mexican immigrant community.